The canyon's sun blazed fiercely, casting its final rays across the Masai Mara savanna, gilding the dry grass and the silhouettes of solitary acacia trees. Robert Harrington wiped the sweat from his brow, adjusted his 600mm lens, and waited patiently. 30 years of wildlife photography had taught him that the most memorable moments always came unexpectedly. This was the 7th day of what he called his final trip, a phrase that had become all too familiar over the past year. At 58, his knees could no longer endure the long safaris as before, and major magazines didn't call as frequently anymore. The world had changed. Beautiful wildlife photos now appeared everywhere on social media, taken by younger, more agile people with more modern equipment. The era of photographers like Robert had passed, a mantra he had repeated so many times it had lost its meaning. But then he suddenly started when he saw movement to his right. About 200 meters away, a female leopard was moving cautiously through the tall grass. Her golden-orange spots glimmered in the sunset. Robert had photographed hundreds of leopards in his career, but never tired of their beauty. He quickly adjusted his lens and began shooting. The female leopard was hunting, moving with absolute focus, but her prey wasn't an antelope or zebra as usual. In the tall grass, Robert recognized a large head, folded legs. It was an African white-headed eagle bending down, its sharp yellow beak tearing at something. Robert wondered what the eagle had hunted and adjusted his focus for a clearer view. Through the lens, he saw the eagle holding a small golden-orange creature under its talons. A hiss cut through the air as the leopard suddenly accelerated, charging straight toward the eagle. The giant bird raised its head, wings spread threateningly, but didn't release its prey. In a tense moment, the two predators faced each other. Robert clicked continuously, his heart pounding in his chest. This was a rare confrontation. Then everything happened in just seconds. The female leopard lunged, the eagle rose into the air, and Robert clearly saw the prey, a lion cub. Robert took a deep breath, his finger constantly pressing the shutter as the leopard extended her front paws. Claws spread wide, fangs exposed in a fierce roar. The eagle dropped the lion cub but still tried to catch him in midair. In a perfect moment that Robert knew would redefine his career, all three creatures were airborne. The leopard with extended claws, the eagle with wings spread, and between them, the falling lion cub. As the eagle flew away, Robert still couldn't believe his eyes. The leopard didn't chase the eagle, but returned to the injured lion cub. Instead of seeing him as an easy meal, the female leopard carefully sniffed the lion cub, gently nudging him with her nose. Impossible, Robert thought, his eyes glued to the camera screen. The leopard was protecting the lion cub. It was truly unbelievable. Leopards and lions are natural enemies. Leopards typically hunt lion cubs when given the chance, and adult lions will kill leopards to eliminate competition. But here, before his eyes, was a female leopard trying to protect a lion cub. The lion cub was clearly severely injured. He tried to stand but fell back down, his tiny body trembling with effort. The female leopard stood guard beside him, ears perked up, alert to any threats. As the sky turned to the deep purple of African dusk, Robert faced a decision. By all ethical principles of wildlife photography, he shouldn't intervene. Nature must be allowed to unfold in its own way, whether beautiful or cruel. But this wasn't a normal natural situation. A leopard trying to save a lion cub. This went against every instinct, every known law of the wild, and the lion cub wouldn't survive the night without help. Just this once, Robert told himself, putting his camera in his bag and taking out his binoculars. Just this once, he would break the rules. As Robert's Land Rover slowly approached, the female leopard stood in front of the lion cub, mouth slightly growling and warning. But she didn't run away. Normally leopards disappear as soon as they see humans approaching, but this leopard remained standing as if understanding this was the last chance to save the small life beside her. Robert spoke softly to the leopard. Though knowing animals don't understand his words, he expressed his intention to help, his voice calm and steady. With slow movements, he opened the car door and stepped down, maintaining a safe distance. Through years of experience, Robert knew leopards rarely attack humans unless cornered, but this leopard was protecting another life, making the situation more unpredictable. Robert continued talking softly, explaining he would take the lion cub and care for him. As if understanding, the female leopard looked at Robert with sharp golden eyes, then down at the weakly breathing lion cub. After a moment that seemed to last forever, she backed up a step. Robert knew this was a rare opportunity. He moved forward one step at a time, still talking softly to the leopard. When he reached the lion cub, he knelt down, carefully examining the wounds. The eagle had caused deep gashes on the cub's back and neck, and one of his hind legs appeared broken. He was exhausted and dehydrated. Robert silently sympathized with the poor little creature, taking off his shirt and gently wrapping the cub. He told the lion cub they would try to save him. As he carefully lifted the lion cub, the female leopard remained standing, observing every movement. There were no signs of attack, only vigilance and something Robert could only describe as concern. Robert promised the leopard he would return, then walked toward the Land Rover. On the way back to camp, he constantly looked in the rearview mirror, and the female leopard, like a golden-orange ghost, was running after the vehicle, maintaining a distance, but never losing track. Robert named the lion cub Jabari, meaning brave in Swahili, and the female leopard Nyota, meaning star. The names seemed to suit their characters. His camp was at the edge of the reserve, a simple wooden lodge with a dark room for processing film, although he had now switched to digital, a small living room, bedroom, and a wide porch overlooking the savannah. This was where he had lived during long months of photography over many years, sometimes alone, sometimes with other photographers or researchers. Robert placed Jabari on a blanket in the living room and began treating his wounds. Through years in the wild, he had learned to handle basic injuries, a necessary skill when living far from medical facilities. He cleaned the wounds with hydrogen peroxide, applied antibiotics, and fixed the injured hind leg with a temporary splint made from a wooden stick and bandages. Throughout the process, Jabari was so weak he barely resisted. His green eyes, all lion cubs have green eyes in their first months, looked at Robert with pain and confusion. Robert comforted Jabari, calling him little guy and a warrior, gently stroking his round head. While he was working, a sound caught his attention. A soft growl from outside. Looking through the window in the moonlight, he saw Nyota sitting about 50 m from the camp, her eyes reflecting light like two golden gems in the darkness. Robert was silently amazed and touched to realize Nyota was still there, watching over Jabari. That night, Robert woke up every 2 hours to check on Jabari, giving him water through a small dropper and monitoring his body temperature. The lion cub was still very weak, but breathing steadily, and each time Robert looked outside was still there. Sometimes lying down, sometimes standing up and pacing, but always watching. By morning, Robert knew he needed to make a decision. Theoretically, he should contact wildlife conservation authorities and hand Jabari over to them. That was the standard procedure. But doing so would mean breaking the strange bond between Nyota and Jabari, a phenomenon he knew scientists would dismiss as impossible without evidence. And he had evidence. Hundreds of photographs capturing the extraordinary moment when a leopard saved a lion cub from an eagle's talons. But Robert knew many would claim the images were staged or misinterpreted. Only if he could document the entire story, not just the initial rescue, but also the developing relationship between two typically enemy species, would the world believe. Robert decided to care for Jabari in his own way, at least until he was strong enough. He would document everything and then find a way to return him to his pride. Robert began the journey as a photographer, but now he had become part of the story, a story he knew would challenge everything he thought he knew about the natural world. The first days were the most difficult. Jabari was very weak and needed to be hand-fed every few hours. Robert prepared a special milk formula for orphaned wildlife supplemented with vitamins and minerals. Initially, Jabari could only drink a few spoonfuls, but gradually his health began to improve. Meanwhile, Nyota remained persistently watchful from outside. Robert began leaving meat for her, initially far from the camp, then gradually closer. By the 5th day, Nyota had accepted meat just 15 minaris from Robert. He was always careful not to look directly into her eyes, a sign of intrusion to big cats. Amazingly, Nyota seemed to understand that Robert wasn't a threat, but Jabari's protector. Each morning and evening, the female leopard would sit, watching through the window, as Robert tended to Jabari's wounds, changed his bandages, and fed him. Sometimes, Nyota would growl softly, as if encouraging. After a week, Robert placed Jabari in a small cage and brought him out to the porch so Nyota could see him more clearly. The female leopard approached closer than ever, just about 5 meters from the cage. She sniffed the air, tasting Jabari's scent, then lay down, observing. Jabari, though still weak, was strong enough to recognize Nyota's presence. He made a small sound, not a lion's roar, or but a child's call for its mother. In response, Nyota growled softly, a sound Robert had never heard from a leopard before, low, gentle, and almost like a lioness's purr. Could have lost her cubs, Robert wondered. Could her maternal instincts have crossed species boundaries? As night fell, Robert hesitantly brought Jabari inside. As soon as he did, Nyota began pacing restlessly, clearly upset. Robert decided to try something bold. He placed Jabari, still in a safe cage, on the porch overnight and sat beside him, holding his defense gun. Nyota came closer, lying down just 2 m from the cage, and didn't leave all night. By morning, as the sun rose, Robert realized he was witnessing something never before recorded in animal science, a leopard co-parenting a lion cub with a human's help. 2 weeks passed and Jabari was much stronger. His hind leg was still weak, but the wounds had healed and he was beginning to show the playful character typical of lion cubs. Robert let him out more often in a safe, fenced area behind the camp, watching from outside the fence. One afternoon, while Robert was working inside, he heard a strange sound from outside. Running out, he saw Nyota had brought a dead baby antelope near the fence. The female leopard looked at Robert, then at the prey, as if saying, "He needs real meat." Robert understood. Jabari was 3 months old, the age when, in nature, lion cubs begin to be introduced to meat. He took the antelope, processed it into small pieces, and fed Jabari. At first, the lion cub refused, but when he smelled the fresh meat, his instincts awakened, and he began to eat voraciously. Nyota observed from a distance her tail slightly wagging, a sign of satisfaction in felines. From then on, Nyota regularly brought meat, sometimes baby antelopes, sometimes rabbits, sometimes just pieces of meat from larger prey she had hunted. Robert understood this was a sign of deep trust. In the wild world, food is life, and sharing food is an act of ultimate trust. As Jabari grew stronger, Robert began to let him roam freely in a larger fenced area. Nyota often lay outside the fence, watching Jabari play and practice walking. Sometimes when Robert wasn't paying attention, the female leopard would demonstrate mock hunting behaviors, hiding, stalking, and pouncing, seemingly teaching Jabari how to hunt. Robert documented everything, thousands of photographs and hundreds of hours of video of this extraordinary relationship. He knew what he was witnessing was unprecedented in science and might never happen again, but he also knew that Jabari couldn't stay forever. The lion cub needed a pride of lions to develop properly to learn the social skills necessary to survive in the wild. This was the question Robert had wrestled with for many nights: how to return Jabari to nature without breaking the bond with Nyota. When Jabari was 5 months old, strong enough to walk normally, and beginning to show rudimentary hunting instincts, Robert knew it was time to start the reintegration process. He spent many days investigating and tracking lion prides in the area, looking for a pride that might accept Jabari. Finally, he found a small pride with 2 adult lionesses and 3 cubs about the same age as Jabari. This was the best opportunity. Lionesses sometimes accept cubs that aren't their own, especially if they have cubs of the same age. The preparation process was gradual. Each day, Robert took Jabari farther from camp, allowing him to explore the natural environment. Nyota always followed, keeping her distance, but never taking her eyes off the lion cub. Sometimes she would lead, showing Jabari trails and water sources. Robert used these trips to teach Jabari to recognize the smells and signs of other species, especially lions and leopards. He let Jabari smell the scent of the lion pride he had chosen, preparing for the day he would meet them. Surprisingly, Nyota seemed to understand this plan. She became more cautious as they approached the lion pride's territory, but never hostile. Instead, she seemed to be preparing Jabari in her own way, teaching him to move silently, how to hide, and how to detect danger. One day, when they were near the lion pride's territory, Robert witnessed a sight that stunned him. Nyota was leading Jabari close to a lioness lying with her cubs. Instead of attacking or fleeing, Nyota stopped at a safe distance and seemed to be introducing Jabari. The lioness stood up, clearly confused and wary, but instead of attacking the leopard or the strange lion cub, she just observed. Jabari, encouraged by Nyota's presence, moved closer, making small sounds, the language of lion cubs calling their mother. Robert held his breath, his camera capturing every moment of this historic meeting. After some hesitation, the lioness allowed Jabari to move closer. Her cubs looked curiously at Jabari, then began to approach him. Meanwhile, Nyota maintained a safe distance but didn't leave. This was the decisive moment. Robert knew that if the lion pride accepted Jabari, it would be his best chance to return to nature and develop as a proper lion. But what about Nyota, the leopard who had become his foster mother? The answer came unexpectedly. After watching Jabari play with the other lion cubs for several hours, Nyota began to retreat, step by step, into the darkness of the bushes. Robert understood she was actively letting go, allowing Jabari to begin his new life. In the following days, Robert brought Jabari back to the lion pride several times. Each time, he stayed longer, integrating deeper with the pride members, and each time watched from afar, gradually extending the distance. Until one day, when Jabari had fully integrated with the lion pride, Nyota no longer appeared. At first, Robert worried, but then realized this was for the best. She had fulfilled her role, saving and protecting Jabari, until he found a new home. 6 months later, on a return trip to the Masai Mara, Robert accidentally encountered the lion pride of which Jabari was now a part. The young lion had grown considerably, though still smaller than his peers, but he was healthy and clearly fully accepted in the pride. And then from the distant forest edge, Robert saw a familiar shadow, Nyota. The leopard was observing the lion pride from a safe distance, her yellow eyes focused on Jabari. As Robert looked through his lens, he could swear he saw a glimmer of satisfaction on the leopard's face as she turned away and disappeared into the bushes. Robert documented the entire story in a book and photo exhibition titled The Boundary of Instinct. His work attracted attention from the scientific community and the public worldwide, challenging traditional understandings of animal behavior and natural instinct. Many scientists were initially skeptical, but faced with irrefutable photographic and video evidence, they were forced to reconsider theories about animal behavior. Some suggested that Nyota may have lost her cubs and maternal instincts had crossed species boundaries. Others proposed there might be special genetic or environmental factors that created this behavior. But for Robert, the story wasn't just about science or fame. It was about a rare moment when he witnessed something far beyond human understanding of the natural world, when a leopard transcended the boundaries of instinct to save and protect her natural enemy, and when a human learned that the natural world still holds countless mysteries waiting to be discovered. Each time he returns to the Masai Mara, Robert still occasionally sees Nyota from afar. The female leopard has now returned to her natural life, but sometimes he catches her standing on a rock, observing the lion pride where Jabari lives, as if silently watching over her special foster child. During one special return, as the African sunset painted the savannah red, Robert witnessed a moment that brought tears to his eyes. Jabari, now a young adult lion with a man beginning to form, was standing on a high rock. At the foot of the rock, far from the lion pride, Nyota appeared. In a brief moment, the two creatures looked at each other, not as natural enemies, but as souls who had once shared a journey together. Jabari didn't growl or appear threatening. Instead, he stood still, tail relaxed, looking down at the foster mother who had once saved his life. Then, as a gesture of respect, he lowered his head before returning to his pride. That night, sitting by the campfire, Robert reviewed the photos he had just taken. In one picture, he discovered something the naked eye couldn't see, a small scar on his leg, the mark of a battle or accident from the past. And then, like a sudden flash of light, he understood that scar was identical to a wound he had seen on a mother leopard killed by poachers years ago when he was working on a project about the impact of poaching. Nyota was probably the cub of that leopard, witnessing her mother's death and carrying that pain as she grew up. Perhaps that was why Nyota had acted so unusually, why she had saved a small, weak life under threat, not just because of maternal instinct, but because she understood what it meant to be lost and alone. In Jabari, perhaps Nyota saw not just a life that needed saving, but an opportunity to heal wounds in her own soul. And in those moments, Robert knew he had been fortunate to witness one of nature's rare wonders, when love and protective instinct transcend all boundaries, even those between species. This story not only changed our understanding of the wild world, but also taught us a profound lesson about empathy, that sometimes the deepest wounds can open the door to the greatest compassion, and that in pain we can find the strength to protect others from similar suffering. As Robert closed his camera and looked up at the star-filled African sky, He silently thanked fate for bringing him to the right place at the right time to witness and document this extraordinary story. A story not just about Naota and Jabari, but about the infinite capacity of love to cross boundaries we thought impossible to cross.